Hey guys, before we begin tonight's journey, take a moment to settle everything around you. Find the most comfortable position for your body. Relax all the places that feel tight. Let your shoulders drop naturally, releasing the fatigue of the whole day, and start to unwind slowly. Tonight, we will follow a young maid in a small Victorian family through a quiet day, from the cold dawn before everyone else wakes up, all the way till the last door is locked late at night. There is nothing here that requires your nerves to be on edge. The rhythm of this story is as gentle as breathing, meant only to carry you softly into sleep. If these quiet journeys help you rest, we warmly welcome you to follow this channel so that whenever you need it, you can meet a calm night like this again. A simple thumbs up or leaving a few words below to tell us where you are listening tonight can help others discover these stories. None of this is urgent. You can do it in the morning or never at all. Right now, there is nothing for you to complete. At this moment, there is only this, the warmth around you, the gradual falling of night, and a long, gentle story waiting to begin. If your eyes want to close, just let them close. Let your breathing slow down. When you are ready, we will step into a silently sleeping house and gently open the first shutter of the morning. Let me take you to a small town in England in the early 1860s, on a morning in the first weeks of early autumn. That year felt fresh like the morning itself, and the town was small. Along a quiet street, a row of narrow brick houses stood shoulder to shoulder, their windows still dark. Behind one window, a family was still asleep. Inside, there was one person about to wake before anyone else. She was very young, maybe even younger than you would expect for someone doing this kind of work. In a large household, these tasks would be shared by many hands, the cook, maids, kitchen help, each responsible for a daily corner. But here it was only her. She was the one who lit the fires, served the tea and meals, she answered the door and made the beds every night. The whole day's rhythm depended on this pair of small hands. We do not intend to rush her. We will quietly stand aside and watch this ordinary day slowly unfold. From the unnoticed first cold hours until the last latch is pushed up late at night. Nothing earth-shattering will happen here. No letters that change everything, no visitors outside the door. Only the slow and patient cycle of household chores. Cleaning the fireplace and polishing brass, baking bread and making the beds. These small tasks repeat again and again like the hands of a clock. If you have ever taken care of your own home, you might already know what this feels like. Before the day starts, the rooms seem to be quietly asking to be put right. Before others feel warmth, bowl after bowl of fire must be kindled to make it come alive. If you have not been through this, then come and learn from her here in the dark, at the place where it all begins. Watch how she moves through the still grey sleeping rooms. Notice the coldness of the iron under her cloth, and the faint wisp of blue smoke when the flames first catch. Listen to the tiny sounds the house makes when only one person is awake. The click of the shutters, the soft fall of ashes, the bubbling in the kettle on the hearth. These are the sounds we will follow tonight. When we reach the end of her day, you might wonder how one girl manages it all without ever seeming hurried. But that is a long way off yet. For now, there is only darkness, cold, and a whole house waiting to be awakened. So please, stay close and lighten your step. Let us go downstairs with her into the calm of the ground floor rooms, where the first task of the morning is already waiting. This is not the kind of soft darkness you feel when someone is breathing beside you in a bedroom. This is a broader darkness that fills the whole house while it sleeps, every door tightly shut, every fire gone out during the night. She wakes within it without anyone calling her. There is no ringing bell, no knocking on the door, only her body moving by habits built up over time, as if the body has learned something so well that the brain no longer needs to give the command. So she rises in the cold. Picture her room just under the roof of the house. It is small, with windows showing a grey tint rather than pure black, because the night outside is already starting to fade very slowly. She dresses by feel and not sight, putting on clothes prepared the previous night. Candles are things to handle carefully. The morning is still long, and once work begins downstairs there will be plenty of light. She ties her hair back. In the dimness, she finds her shoes. Then she walks down the stairs, one hand touching the wall, moving deeper into the darkness of the stairwell. Have you ever woken up alone in a house full of sleeping people? It is a special kind of quiet. The wooden floor knows your weight and responds softly. The whole place seems to be holding its breath, waiting to be told that a new day has arrived. And she is the one to deliver that message. Morning does not come by itself in this house. It is carried in by her hands, moving from room to room, and now it begins at the bottom of the stairs, in the cold. Her first task takes her to the downstairs rooms, which remain shut tight like blind spots swallowed by darkness. In those days, in a row of terraced houses like this, nighttime windows were closed off by folded wooden shutters. They were pulled down and latched to keep out the cold, the dark, and whatever the night might bring. By morning, these shutters made every room a sealed box, as dark inside as a cupboard. So she moves from one window to the next, unlatches the catches, folding the shutters back into their frames neatly so they sit flush against the wall. Each window open lets in a little more grey light. It is not yet dawn, not truly light, but it is a promise of day. Room after room begins to remember its own shape. She tidies the living room, then the room behind it, and the small hallway between the two. When weather allows, she raises the windows by an inch to let stale night air flow out and fresh air come in. The chill pours in from the windowsill, gathering around her ankles. She does not mind yet. There is too much work, and cold is nothing. Besides, cold will soon become her constant companion in another way. Pause with her for a moment by one of these windows before she is pushed forward by the tasks ahead. Outside the glass, the night on the street still weighs heavier than the morning light. The row of houses opposite stands out in the darkening sky, its outlines darker still. If this town had street lamps, there might be one burning at the corner in the distance, a steady little gold dot, still untouched by anyone coming to snuff it out. No vehicles, no sound. Perhaps far away, the day's first horse-drawn cart slowly rolls along a cobbled street, the milk cart or the baker's, carrying the start of someone else's morning. The world outside is doing exactly what she is, waking bit by bit in the cold before being called. She is not as alone as this house makes her feel. Elsewhere in the town, behind other dark windows, other early hands are kindling their fires. She just cannot hear them yet. She fastens the window shut again at that inch-wide gap and turns back inside. Morning waits for no one. She comes to the heart of morning, the kitchen stove. If you've never tried waking a fire from nothing, let me tell you what it takes. The stove is a huge iron thing, black and cold, set into the kitchen wall. The fire from last night has long since died out inside. What's left are grey ashes and some black coal dust, along with a cold that has seeped deep into the metal, radiating out like warmth turned upside down. Before the kettle can boil, before the family can have their tea, all of this must be cleaned away and coaxed back to life. She must do this kneeling in semi-darkness, as daylight is not yet warm enough to ease the ache in her fingers. She kneels down. She rakes out the cold ashes with care. She moves slowly so the dust does not fly up and settle on everything, because a dusty kitchen means the morning's work is wasted. She does not throw the coal dust away. Those half-burned chunks, the coal that still has life, she picks out by hand to keep, since they can still burn. In this house, nothing that can be saved is wasted. A coal scuttle costs money, and every penny here is counted. She has long known, even if no one ever said it, that frugality is its own skill. Have you noticed how tiny savings turn into habits you don't even think about? She does not decide consciously to keep the coal dust. Her fingers just know to do it, just like the other 100 small things she does without thought. Wiping, sorting, tidying. A well-run home is mostly kept going by hands that no longer need orders. When the ashes build up past what she can pick out by eye, She uses a special sifter and gently shakes the big heap of grey. Fine dust falls through like soft flour, while the small hard bits of coal stay caught in the mesh, saved to light the next fire. It is a job that takes patience and is full of dust, so she turns her face slightly to avoid it. But a scuttle of carefully sifted coal is worth more than 1.5 scuttles wasted by carelessness, and over the winter these savings add up. This whole house runs on such small economies, made by her quiet daily work. When the grate is clean, she starts the new fire. That is an art in itself, and she already knows it well. First comes a rolled bundle of paper, then loose dry kindling laid over it in a nest light enough for the flames to breathe. On top go the saved coal dust and a few chunks of new coal, not too many and not packed down. A smothered fire is no use. She takes a match or a spark caught from a paper twist and lights the paper at the bottom. Then she kneels and watches. This is one of the few morning moments when waiting is allowed. The paper burns bright and small. The flames climb up the kindling, hesitate a little, then catch steady. A thin wisp of blue smoke rises and curls up the flue, pale grey against the black iron wall, followed by that smell that means morning in this house, paper, resin and coal just catching fire. She watches it like you watch something fragile you made yourself in a way it really is hers. There is no heat yet, only the promise of warmth, but that promise is enough to make her stay kneeling in the cold a little longer. Then the fire is left to its slow work while she turns to the stove itself. The stove is not just for burning, it must be maintained, polished and cared for, like tending a horse or a pair of boots. A neglected stove looks like a neglected house, and half the house's look comes from care. She applies stove black to the black parts, brushing the thick paste into the iron, using another brush to buff it to a muted shine. It is a dirty job, leaving marks on her hands and apron, which she has specially set aside the rough cloth for so the black won't go where it shouldn't. But when done, the iron glows with a deep calm light, like a beetle's back, and it is a quiet pride even when nobody is awake to see it. The shiny parts get a different treatment. All over the stove are steel bits, the fireguard, rods, small fittings, that should shine like silver, not have the coal's dull glow. She does not use stove black on these. She polishes them with a piece of leather, rubbing metal with cloth until the darkness of the night fades away. The steel regains its shape, catching the tiny bits of light and casting dancing glints through the kitchen. There is a pleasure in this hard to explain to anyone who has not done it. The metal seems to wake under your hands. One moment it is dull and asleep, the next it is bright and alive, and if you lean closer in the half-light you can almost see your own face there. Then there is the hearth itself to manage. The slab of stone in front of the stove where warmth spreads and ashes sometimes fall. In a well-kept home, the hearth is never dusty or stained. It needs to be brushed white. She keeps a pale stone reserved for this, soft enough to leave colour on moist surfaces. She wets the hearth and rubs the stone from one side to the other in long, smooth strokes until the slab is clean and pale with sharp edges. It is a small thing. Almost nobody notices it. The family will pass by without a glance, just like people pass by anything that is always there and always perfect. But she knows, and a sharp-eyed mistress would know too, so the hearth is brushed white every morning. Those unnoticed things that get noticed immediately if they disappear. That is the strange rule of this work, understood without words. The work is most successful when it remains unseen. Clean hearth, lit fire, polished railings, quietly sorted rooms. None of it boasts. It only makes the house feel like a lovingly kept home, warm, orderly, ready. So those who live here need never think about how it came to look this way. Only the day she fails will be seen by others. Done well, it melts into the comfort of morning routine, and she disappears with it. In a large household, all of this would be shared. There would be a cook maid for heavy work, and below her a scullery maid. The work would be divided so no one pair of hands had everything. Here, there is no division. Raking ashes and lighting fires, applying stove black and polishing steel, these are all hers, heavy but somehow whole. She is not a small part of the morning, she is the morning itself. The day begins where she does, never before. By now the fire is steady, really burning, low and smooth and growing brighter. The first real warmth gathers in front of the stove, forming a small patch barely wider than the hearth, and she feels it on her face and her cold red hands like a reward. Behind her, the kitchen remains cold, but in this corner of iron, morning has been made, warm and real. Before she moves on, there is one last task, the simplest but for some reason the most hopeful. She takes the kettle, washes it out and fills it with fresh cold water drawn this morning. Then she sets it on the stoveplate near the growing heat where it gathers. Now all she can do is wait for it to slowly boil. There is a moment of stillness, then very faintly it starts, a small singing in the iron. This is the first sound of the workday, a sign that tea is coming and breakfast will follow, that the long, slow routine of the house has truly begun. She rises from the hearth. The stone makes her knees ache. Her nails are black with ash, her wrists stained too, as a new day stretches ahead hour by hour, still not fully awake. The fire is going. The kettle is on. The shutters have been opened to slow grey light. In this quiet moment, before the others in the house start to stir, she stands alone in the warm comfort she has made, letting herself just be still for a while. Outside the door, the street slowly shifts from black to grey. The room where a family is about to enjoy breakfast does not belong to anyone at this moment. It still belongs to the night. The curtains are tightly drawn, the air is stuffy and cold, and everything inside remains exactly as it was left when the last person went upstairs to sleep. A chair pushed askew, a dim, unlit fireplace. A faint and deep sense envelops it all. A silence unique to a room that was once filled with breath and then left empty for several hours. She quietly enters, just like you would enter a room that is still asleep, and hurriedly beginning to wake it up. Her first action is to walk to the window and draw back the heavy curtains, letting the morning sunlight pour in. These curtains are very thick, lined to keep out the cold. When pulled open, the fabric makes a soft rubbing sound and sends up tiny dust particles hidden in every fold. A grey light penetrates the glass and spreads over the small rug, thin and pale, but now enough to see clearly, enough to start work. The room seems more alive instantly. If the weather were not too chilly, she would open the window just a crack, letting the cool, fresh air slip over the sill and slowly take away the night stuffiness. The faint old smells of yesterday's fire, yesterday's oil lamp, and yesterday's people. It sweeps out every subtle, lingering scent trapped inside a closed room until dawn. The room must breathe first, otherwise people inside will not feel comfortable. She knows this without anyone telling her. She opens the window as if she were gently waking a sleeper she cares about. Once the light comes in, the first thing she does is protect those things that must not get dirty. The work ahead will be dirty, and a careful servant thinks ahead before the dust settles, rather than fixing things afterward. So before doing anything else, she kneels and rolls up the rug in front of the fireplace, the high-quality carpet placed there, folding it back so dust from cleaning the fireplace grate will fall onto the bare floor instead of the wool. Then she moves the fireplace guard, the low metal barrier standing before the grate, to the side out of the way. These are small actions that take just a moment but determine whether the morning's work is swift and neat, or whether the afternoon must be spent fixing careless damage. She learned this lesson well, like most servants do, from having made mistakes. If the table has been covered with a cloth overnight, she now folds it up. She doesn't just carelessly ball it up. She takes it to a spot where the dust she will raise cannot reach, shakes it out, then folds it edge to edge, corner to corner, like you would fold something to use again. She lays it neatly aside, leaving the table bare and standing silently, waiting. Have you ever decided to start from scratch and clean a room in the right order? There is a deep and quiet pleasure in it, something a rushed clean can never bring. Every task prepares for the next. Nothing needs to be done twice, and in your hands, this room begins to come together in a way you can not only see but feel. Now she begins to sweep the floor. She takes up the broom and sweeps slowly and evenly toward the fireplace, gathering the previous day's dust ahead of her. A careful person knows a little trick here. Before starting, she takes a handful of wet tea leaves left in yesterday's teapot and sprinkles them on the carpet. When the broom passes over, the moist tea leaves catch and press down the dust, allowing it to be swept up cleanly, rather than fluttering into the air to settle again on every surface she has not yet reached. It is a small thing, just sprinkling used tea leaves, but this little experience turns an unpleasant chore into a craft. She sweeps all the dust toward the hearth, where dust already collects, then gathers it all up there. She doesn't miss the corners or the crumbs embedded under the table from yesterday, because these forgotten edges are exactly where dirt likes to hide and where a sharp eye will look. Next comes cleaning the fireplace grate, and for this she kneels again. She spreads a rough cloth over the rug near the hearth to catch anything that falls. Before beginning, she sets out all her tools close at hand, the brush, a leather cloth, a box of stove polish. That way she won't have to get up halfway through with blackened hands and cross the room to fetch something. This is smart work. A servant who has to stand up 6 times to get things wastes half the morning walking. One who brings everything once, kneels once and stands up to finish is sharp and efficient. Cleaning a cold fireplace grate is much like cleaning any grate. Raking out dead ashes, clearing the bar, polishing the iron with dark polish until it glows with a deep soft sheen. Wiping the shiny fittings with a cloth until they reflect the grey light from the window. The process is the same as cleaning a kitchen stove but with a different purpose. The kitchen fire is practical. This fire is for show. This room is where the family sits and rests, where guests might be received, so the grate must not only work but look good. Bright and flawless, whether or not a fire actually burns here during the day. Whether they light a fire depends on the season, and the season is changing now. The morning has a coolness summer does not have. When the grate is clean, she might arrange nearby some fire-starting materials. Paper, wood, a little coal, placed just so, to be lit later when the family comes downstairs and the room's chill needs driving away. Or she might just lay them out cold, ready to be lit with a single word. Either way, the grate is tidied and that rough cloth holding the ashes inside is bundled up and taken away. The mirrors must be considered as well. Above the mantel hangs a mirror that after a morning has gathered a faint haze from the breath, dust and oil lamp smoke in the closed room. She breathes gently on it, then wipes it clean, circling with the cloth until the haze clears and the mirror reflects the room clearly. The pale window behind her, the momentary glimpse of her own face, the mantel's sharp lines. A foggy mirror makes the whole room seem neglected. A bright mirror doubles the light and reflects the weak morning rays back into the room, making it feel bigger and fresher. It is a small surface, easily forgotten, but she doesn't forget. The fireplace guard is put back in place neatly. The rug in front of the fireplace is unrolled and straightened, edges aligned parallel to the hearth and smoothed by hand. A crooked rug is a small thing, but sharp eyes notice it instantly. She has learned to see her work as the lady of the house would, not as a cleaning girl, but through the eyes of the lady about to enter. This dual perspective is half the art of servant service. You work with your own hands, but judge it through someone else's eyes. In a house this large, it is worth mentioning the role of this room. In a big mansion, there would be many similar rooms, breakfast rooms, morning rooms, dining rooms, each used at a certain time of day, each with its own servant. Here, this family has only a few rooms where they truly live, and this is the best of them. It serves double or even triple duty. This is where they eat, sit and rest and where guests might be received. So it must stay proper, becoming the room where strangers judge the family, all the burden falling on this single space and the lone girl who tends it. There is no grand parlour to show off the family, only here, her hands, and the care she gives when no one is watching. Now it is dusting time, which sounds easy but is where servants most often slip up. Poor dusting can be worse than none at all. It gives the impression of care without substance. A sharp lady immediately sees through it. She does more than lightly dust surfaces with a cloth. She dusts thoroughly, high and low. The table legs, the chair legs and stretchers, the turn chair feet that no one ever glances at. She has wiped them all. The dust that gathers there is what careless girls leave and careful girls never do. On the mantel, in the silver cabinet, no matter where small items are placed, a vase, a clock, a pair of little statues, a framed portrait, There is a particular wrong way to dust, and she knows it because she has seen others do it. Lazy dusting means wiping around each item without moving it, leaving a small clean ring and a faint grey shadow showing it hasn't been moved in weeks. Nothing tells a watchful lady more clearly that this room has not been truly cleaned, so she does the opposite. She lifts each item, cleans the surface beneath it, then sets it back exactly as it was, even keeping the exact angle. This is slower, much slower. But this is what makes a room truly dusted, not just one that looks like it at a glance. There is a silent conversation here between servant and lady, even though they might barely speak a word all morning. The lady will come downstairs and enter, her gaze casually sweeping over chair legs, clock bases, behind vases. When she finds everything spotless, she thinks nothing more. She just feels the room is in order, then walks on. That feeling, the sense that everything is as it should be, is the whole point of the girl's careful work over 1 hour. Praise is rare in this job. The reward is a kind of absence, not being found to be at fault, and she has learned to find satisfaction in that. When dusting is complete, the room is almost ready. The only thing left is to set the table for the meal. She spreads a clean white breakfast cloth over the bare table, shakes and smooths it out evenly, so it hangs down uniformly on all sides. On the cloth, she arranges the breakfast items, placing each thing in a fixed and unchanging order, her hands moving without having to think. She sets places for each person who will sit. All the everyday things needed for breakfast are placed just so. She lines up each chair, gently pushing them in until they are evenly spaced. Then she walks around the table, making sure the cloth falls straight with nothing crooked. All this done simply and neatly, the table becomes exactly what a carefully set breakfast table should look like, patiently waiting for those who have yet to come. The fireplace grate shines brightly. The rug lies straight. Each item stands spotless in its place. The cloth is spread, the silverware set, and the window welcomes the morning light. This room, which 1 hour ago belonged to the night and to no one, now belongs to the day and to the family who will soon fill it. None of them will know what effort went into this. They will come downstairs and take it for granted, warm, clean, ready. In their world, the breakfast room is always ready. She does not wait for them. That is not her place, and besides, there is so much more to do. She puts away the cloth and brush, takes one last calm look around, ensuring no spot is missed. Chair legs, clock bases, behind vases, edges of the hearth rug. Then she leaves, gently closing the door behind her. The room remains in its quiet, perfect and waiting, holding steady the order she has given it. Behind the closed door, the clock she wiped ticks quietly alone in the clean, still room. The hallway is the backbone of this house, the passage to all the other rooms, and before a new day passes through it, it must be tidied up properly. Early in the morning, she came here carrying a broom. The hallway gathers a special kind of dirt. Soil tracked in by people coming and going, grit brought in on shoes from the street, fine dust that settles overnight everywhere. These are more noticeable here than anywhere else, lying on the bare wooden floors and the cold tiles by the door. So she sweeps along the corridor, steady and unhurried, pushing the dust toward the door where it can be gathered and taken away, not swept further inside the house. There are also mats to care for, those placed just inside the door to scrape off the dirtiest mud brought in from the street. She lifts them up and takes them outside, shaking them hard in the feverish morning air so the dirt trodden in yesterday loosens and falls onto the outdoors where it belongs. That shaking brings a small satisfaction. A cloud of dust scattering in the cold, the mats growing light in her hands. Then they are laid out again, neat and square, ready to face the first feat of the day. Have you ever thought about what a doorstep can say? In a row of houses standing side by side, each front door almost opens directly onto the sidewalk, and this doorstep is the only part strangers get to see of that home. A clean white doorstep tells you there is order inside those walls, that someone cares, and that a respectable family lives there. A dull, neglected doorstep sends the opposite message, announcing it to every passerby, neighbour, and visiting vendor. The doorstep must never be ignored. Whatever the weather, every morning someone has to kneel there, half inside and half outside to clean it properly. She knelt at the doorstep with a cloth, water and a stone used for whitening. She washed the step clean, removing the mud and footprints from yesterday. Using the whetstone on the damp doorstep, she rubbed it from one end to the other until its surface turned pale, even, and sharply edged, just like the whitewashed hearth inside the house, finished by the same patient hand in nearly the same way. In the cold months, this is a miserable chore, the chill from the sidewalk seeping through her knees, her hands turning bright red in the water. But when she sat back on her heels and looked at the step, now clean, white and tidy, the house looked well cared for to passers-by. The truth was exactly that. She was the one who cared for it. If she could lift her eyes from her doorstep for a moment, she would see that she is not alone in this task. Looking down the row of houses in the dim morning light, other girls and women are kneeling before their doors, doing exactly the same thing. Along the street are rows of bent backs, each scrubbing stone steps, and a line of white doorsteps appearing in turn, a quiet army of hands making the town look respectable before it is fully awake. No one organises this. It is not niche needed. In each home like this, people simply expect their doorstep to be cleaned in the morning, so the whole street turns white, with each woman working patiently at her own door, not speaking to one another, but sharing the same quiet labour. There is a strange companionship in this, even if they may never speak a word. She is part of something much bigger, a town-wide task carried out all at once. These front doors have some shiny little parts. A door knocker, maybe a handle, a mail slot. These attract the attention of everyone standing outside waiting. If left alone, the brass would grow dull and blackened, covered by a tired brown film. But when polished, it shines like soft gold. That glow, just like the white doorstep below, is what the street sees. So she takes a leather cloth and polish and wipes every piece of brass until the dullness disappears, and the metal gives off a warm, bright light. She rubs, wipes, and polishes until she can see the faint light of morning reflected inside it. It is the same work as shining the steel inside the stove, only now it faces outward, meant for strangers to see rather than for the comfort of the family. The entire front of the house, the white doorstep and the golden brass, is a quiet statement made every day by her hands. This is a home well tended. The boots from inside the house have been set outside waiting to be cleaned, just like every night. Cleaning them is a dirty, detailed job. The mud from yesterday has dried on the surface and must be brushed off first, knocking off the worst parts, then brushing away the remaining soil with a stiff brush before even thinking about shining them. Then comes the shoe polish on the leather, applied with one brush, spread with another, and finally buffed smooth with a third soft brush or cloth until the dull leather gleams and you can almost see your reflection on the toe. She cleans them one pair at a time, so everyone leaves the house with respectable shoes. It's a grimy job, awkwardly squeezed in between tasks that demand she stay clean. So she can only manage small bits when there's a chance. During the colder months, when the streets are muddy and mornings are especially busy, a thoughtful mistress sometimes keeps 2 pairs of boots for swapping so one pair can be saved for cleaning later, when there's more time and less pressure. This small kindness is a real kindness, kind that separates a demanding employer from one who can be tolerated. She knows the difference well. Not every employer she works for would think of this. While doing these early chores, she must also answer the door. Morning is when the vendors appear, and whenever the doorbell rings, she must open it. The milkman arrives, the boy delivering the meat, and anything else ordered by the family. While they are still asleep or sitting at the table, these things are brought by foot or cart. She accepts what is left and says the necessary words, the orders for tomorrow, and small details about the family's daily food supply. Because at this time, this is more her responsibility than anyone else's. Those knocks in the morning are rarely visitors. They are the world delivering food to the house. And she is the one greeting it at the doorstep and bringing it inside. Now that the heavy, dirty work of the morning is done, a small change has taken place on her. Almost a transformation. Because she cannot meet the lady of the house looking like this, with stove soot on her hands and dust from the hallway on her apron, she goes to wash up, scrubbing her hands and face to remove traces from the stove, the hearth, and the boots until her skin is clean. Though her hands are red and rough, they are now fit to carry food and serve at the table. She takes off the rough cloth apron she wore doing the dirty work and puts on a clean white one, fresh and plain. That white apron instantly transforms her from the girl kneeling in the dark by the hearth to the orderly servant answering the door and bringing breakfast. She is still the same girl, but the day has two faces, the unseen labour and the visible service, and the white apron marks the line between them. When the family upstairs begins to stir, she is ready, clean and apron-clad, waiting with no sign of the 2 hours of work now past. When the family comes downstairs, breakfast begins. For a while, morning's labour becomes shared. She moves the tea urn, the tall container holding hot water at the centre of the breakfast table, and sets it where the lady can reach. Then a small division of labour takes place, one that marks the difference between mistress and servant more clearly than any words. Making tea is the lady's task. She measures the leaves, pours the boiling water, and lets it steep, because it is her way of making tea, and a refined lady would never entrust this small ritual to anyone else. Eggs are sometimes made this way too. She watches them in the water until they are perfectly done. Whether she likes them soft-boiled or hard, these are light, warm, pleasant tasks done sitting in a cosy room beside a nicely set table. The table they sit at is not luxurious. This is a merchant's house, a respectable home with strict budgeting. Breakfast is simple but tasty. There is bread and butter, tea in a pot, bacon is frying in a pan just the way she's cooking it, 1 egg for each person, and cold meat left over from yesterday, arranged as nicely as possible. That is enough. Comfortable enough. On mornings like this, in towns and countries everywhere, thousands of homes sit down to a breakfast just like this. Steam rises from the tea urn, blending into the cool air of the room. The window is cracked open to let out cooking smells. In the fireplace a small fire burns to fight off the autumn chill, warming the room. The family talks, or they don't, wrapped in the easy quiet that happens among people who see each other every day. Through all of this, she moves back and forth, fetching and carrying, keeping the little breakfast machine running smoothly but never quite becoming its centre. While the lady makes tea, she moves through the kitchen, preparing whatever is needed for breakfast. The bacon sizzles in the frying pan until it curls and crisps, filling the kitchen with its smell. If kidneys or a piece of fish are on the menu, she cooks them and brings them hot to the table. She handles the parts of the meal that need fire, standing and tending the stove, then plates up and serves at the family's table before going back to prepare the next dish. In this way, the meal is made by their combined effort. The lady's part and the servant's part, each with their own role. If there is cold meat left over from yesterday's roast, she never just brings it straight out again. It is a small thing, but that small thing distinguishes a good servant from an ordinary one. If the cold meat is carelessly served on the same plate it last appeared on, it looks like scraps, like something half-heartedly given. So she takes a clean plate, arranges the meat neatly, and decorates it with a few sprigs of fresh flat-leaf parsley, giving it a look that it has been thoughtfully cared for, a touch of green on the pale meat. That parsley costs almost nothing, just a little time to pick it from a pot, but it turns leftover scraps into a dish that looks deliberately prepared. The family eats it without comment, as they do everything else, never knowing why the cold meat at this house always looks just a little better. The answer is the parsley, and the answer is her. In fact, they are one and the same. Breakfast is served, and the family sits in the warm, tidy room she prepared before anyone was awake. She does not sit with them. She moves quietly in and out, wearing her white apron, bringing hot dishes and clearing empty plates. She exists at the edges of this meal, but is not part of it. Watch her as she waits by the door. She stands quietly with her hands folded. Her face shows no emotion, yet her mind is already turning. The beds need to be made. The breakfast dishes must be cleared away. Before receiving today's orders, the kitchen has to be cleaned. She holds the whole morning's rhythm in her mind as a good servant must, so nothing is forgotten and nothing delayed. While they linger in the scent of tea, her thoughts have already moved forward. Morning is not half over, and upstairs there are beds waiting to be stripped and aired. This day, just beginning, already demands one task after another. But for now, the hallway smells of warm bacon, the doorstep is white and clean, the brass gleams, the house has finally fully woken. The street is awake too. Shops are opening. A new day is here, and she has quietly turned and gone toward the stairs. Her own breakfast was the fastest meal eaten in this house. It was eaten standing up in the kitchen, or almost standing up, squeezed, to cushion the brief pause between serving the family and starting the next round of heavy work. A cup of tea, now a bit oversteeped in the pot. Bread and anything that could be eaten with one hand while the other hand reached for a cloth. There was no time to dawdle, and no sitting down at a set table in the warm room. She ate simply because the body had to fuel itself to keep going. Then she rose and got busy again as the morning climbed toward its busiest stretch upstairs. So she went upstairs to the family's sleeping area. The first thing to do in each bedroom was to air it out. She walked to the window and pushed it wide open, letting the cool, clean morning air flood in over the sill, because a room that had held sleep all night carried with it a haze of that sleepiness that had to be driven out and replaced by fresh air. People of that era held an unshakable belief in fresh air. They thought the closed-up night air grew stuffy and unhealthy, so windows had to be opened every day to keep the people inside healthy. Whether that belief was correct or not, every bed's bedding was pulled back facing the open window, so each room could spend an hour bathing in cold air. She pulled back the bedding, peeled off the blankets and sheets, and spread them open over the foot of the bed and the back of a chair, letting the air pass through every layer to take away the lingering warmth and dampness from the body. The bed stood open like that, yawning wide and rumpled, airing out while she moved on to others here. It looked odd. All the beds in the house open to the cold at once, breathing in the fresh air. But it was right. These beds left open for airing went against comfort, but that was precisely so the beds could be fresh, cool and pleasant when night returned. She understood this and gladly left them open before heading downstairs. Before leaving, she lingered a moment in one of the empty rooms. The window was wide open to the morning. A strip of cold light slanted across the bare mattress cloth and the folded bedding piled on the chair. An hour ago the room had been warm, dark and heavy with sleep. Now it was cold, bright and empty, that funny quiet found only in rooms caught between two uses, belonging neither to the night nor yet to the day. The blankets breathed by the window. Cold air slipped through the sheets, carrying away the body heat and sleep fog. By evening, when the window was closed again, the fire stoked, and the bed made, all that freshness would be folded back inside, waiting quietly. She did not stay to savour this quiet. She rarely had the time. Yet whether she stopped to feel it or not, the quiet was there, created by her. The family had already risen to begin their day's tasks, leaving the usual mess after every meal. Used plates, cups holding cold tea leaves and crumbs scattered on the cloth and the floor. She cleaned it all up, carrying things down to the kitchen to handle, shaking the tablecloth free of crumbs and brushing crumbs off the floor underneath. A room flawless an hour ago slipped into a mild disorder after a meal, but restoring order was just part of the rhythm. The room was ready, the room was used, the room was restored, again and again all day. Then she went upstairs a second time, this time her hands full. She carried a pot of hot water, a bucket for dirty water, and her cloths, 2 cloths. What she had to do now was the detailed work in the bedrooms, emptying chamber pots, scalding and wiping them with hot water. In this pre-plumbed upstairs era, this was a necessary ritual. It was the least pleasant part of the morning chores, and denying that was pointless. Yet in a well-run home, doing these tasks was like all the others, quick, quiet, matter-of-fact, never neglected. The contents of the pots were tipped into the dirty water bucket for taking downstairs. They were scalded, wiped clean, and put back where they belonged, ready for another day. It was humble and thankless work, requiring no skill but a strong stomach, nimble hands, and a refusal to quit halfway. She had all 3, and so she carried on. One point deserves special attention, because it quietly shaped her whole day's work. Upstairs there was no running water, no pipes delivered water to bedrooms, and there was no tap on the landing. Every drop needed upstairs, hot or cold, for washing, filling vessels or emptying dirty water, had to be carried by hand in pots and buckets from the downstairs kitchen. Each used drop had to be carried down again. Imagine what that meant on a morning. Heaving the heavy hot water pot upstairs, lugging the dirty water bucket down, going up and down the stairs countless times with heavy loads in both hands. No wonder her arms were so strong and her footsteps steady on the stairs. All the upstairs life, all the washing and cleaning depended quietly on her legs and hands, hauling water up and down all morning, while those upstairs never truly saw how water reached them. Making a bed well by hand is no easy task. Beds in that era were deep and heavy, whether feather beds or mattresses, and had to be flipped, shaken and beaten daily, or they would go flat and lumpy or develop an indentation from a sleeper's side. Flipping a giant feather bed was truly a two-person job, so here the lady of the house, Mrs. Brearley, or her daughter Miss Edith would lend a hand. They would stand on opposite sides of the bed, lifting, flipping and shaking the mattress, smoothing it out before putting on the sheets. But before handling clean bedding, she changed out of her apron. She kept a special apron just for this, one big and rough enough to cover her clothes, worn only when making the bed. Her regular apron, even the clean white one, had been worn all morning around the house, but the bedclothes had to stay spotless. So between the two, she tied on this plain apron made of fresh coarse cloth, a humble barrier, and only then touched the sheets. It was a small act of caution easily overlooked, but one that ran through all her work. Clean things stayed clean. Dirty work had its own apron. Everything had its place down to which cloth touched what. With Miss Edith or the lady's help, the heavy mattress was flipped and given a good shake. Between them they shared a practice skill, knowing just how to grip, lift and turn that huge soft weight of feathers. They flipped the side ridden with sleep underneath so the clean side faced up. The feather bed was shaken to loosen and evenly distribute the feathers inside, then given a proper beating so it wouldn't harden and clump but stay light and full across the whole bed. This was close teamwork that made them warm with effort. As they shook the bedding gave off a faint fresh smell, feathers shifting and rustling under their hands. They might exchange a word or two, a shift this way, or lift your end. Nothing more. Simple talk between two people familiar with the work. Then the bottom sheet was pulled tight, smoothed out and tucked firmly at all four corners so no wrinkles pressed into skin at night. Top sheets and blankets followed, laid out, straightened and tucked neatly. The whole bed was pulled tight and smooth and covered with a bedspread. Pillows were shaken full and placed squarely at the head. A well-made bed had a certain look, plump, neat, inviting. Standing back and seeing it like that brought a quiet joy, knowing someone would open its smoothness that night, gratefully slipping inside, never thinking of the two pairs of hands that made it ready. Every morning the same routine, bed stripped open, aired, flipped, made up, then messed up again by night, then stripped and made again the next day, endlessly repeated. Nothing was ever finished for good. The bed made this morning still needed making tomorrow just like today. Yet there was no bitterness in doing this. No need for bitterness, because this was what holding a home felt like. The same few actions repeated faithfully, lighting fires, making beds, cooking meals like wheels turning. Running a home meant doing the same things over and over, finding peace if possible in those rhythms instead of exhaustion. Once the bed was made, the bedroom still needed tidying. She dusted them like the rooms downstairs, thoroughly from top to bottom. She picked up every small thing on washstands and cupboards to wipe underneath. She polished the mirror until it shone. She refilled fresh water in the water jugs, carrying clean water up to have ready in each room. She wiped down the washstand, put the soap in a soap dish, folded clean towels neatly on the towel rack so whoever came to wash next would find fresh, ready things. Towels were straightened just so. After the room had aired long enough, she pulled the window down again to block the chill gathering with autumn. This way, when the sleeper returned, the bedroom would be cool but not cold. Each room was restored to that quiet standby state so when someone came upstairs later, they would find it cool, ventilated, spotless. The beds made, water fresh, everything in its place. She gently swept the stairs, one step at a time, brushing dust off every tread so the carpet on the stairs stayed clean. The whole house's vertical passage was made ready to walk. The stairs were a job caught between rooms, belonging neither here nor there, easy to overlook, but something a careful servant never forgot. And the sitting room, or what was kept as the best room in the house, waited for its morning heavy cleaning. That heavy cleaning was her job now, sweeping, dusting, straightening. Labour that readied the room to need only light tidying later for enjoyment. She did not do the full routine every day, some parts waited for the right day of the week. But every day she did a rough cleaning so that the house's best room, like every other room, could be kept in a decent, usable state that made family life possible. Always ready for visitors or night's return. Always ready by her hands. Every bed in the house was made plump and neat. Every bedroom aired, dusted and tidied. The stairs swept. The best room attended to. The dirty water dealt with. Cloths washed and hung. The entire upstairs area, once a chaos of slept-in rooms at wake-up, had been restored room by room, silently by a girl climbing the stairs countless times. She stood upright, brushing a stray hair from her face with the back of her hand. For this moment she paused on the landing, surrounded by the cool, ventilated quiet of rooms finished. Now above was very quiet. Doors opened onto made beds and bright glass. The light had shifted from grey to a clean, pale gold. Carrying water made her arms ache. Kneeling made her knees ache, and there was still a long day ahead. But this part of the work was done, and done well. And before going downstairs, she gave herself a moment in that breath to feel it. Below her, faint and ordinary, daytime went on, and the kitchen and the morning's next tasks waited at the foot of the stairs. In a household like this, the main meal is the most lavish one of the day, not served late at night but enjoyed earlier in the afternoon while the light is still bright. It is a meal silently prepared for throughout the entire morning. Serving it hot, neat and right on time at the table is the single most demanding task she performs all day. She comes downstairs to the kitchen fully engaged. Here, just like when making breakfast, the work is sometimes shared. The lady of the house often comes down to help with cooking, so the two of them, the lady and the girl, busy themselves together in front of the stove and the prep counters. The clean white apron used for bringing breakfast is set aside. Cooking is a messy job prone to spills and stains. She ties on a rough bib apron over her dress that covers her snugly from the chest down, shielding her from grease, flour and flames. You start to notice she has a different apron for every kind of task. White for serving tea and meals, coarse cloth for cleaning the stove grate, large for making beds, and now a bib apron for cooking. Each one prepared to guard against particular dirt and grime. Each apron's part of a careful practice system so ingrained she does not need to think. She just naturally reaches for the right apron as easily as you pick the perfect word. Standing by the stove, she feels the heat now, not the cold of the morning when the fire was first lit, as she cooks the main meal dish by dish. Most days, the centrepiece is a large bone-in roast, the star attraction and source of pride on the table. If it is roasted, it is placed in front of the fire rather than inside an oven, hanging where the open flame's heat touches it, and turned continuously so it browns evenly on all sides. It must be basted over and over again with hot fat and meat juices, spooned back onto the surface during roasting. This keeps the meat moist and develops an appealing deep brown crust without drying out. Basting requires patience and focus. She cannot stray far. Throughout cooking, she must repeatedly return to the meat, judging by its colour, aroma and expert feel how done it is and how much longer it still needs. Potatoes are peeled and boiled or roasted beneath the meat in the dripping fat until crisp and golden, soaking up the savoury aroma. Seasonal green vegetables are washed and trimmed, added at the last moment so they arrive at the table fresh and vibrant, not dull or limp. When the meat is taken off to rest, the rich brown drippings left in the pan are used to make gravy. Then there is the pudding, usually something wrapped in a cloth or cooked in a basin, a dense and warming suet pudding. It takes a long time and is started very early, steaming away beside the fire during the whole cooking process. Each item requires its own timing and care, and each has a perfect moment just out of the pot that she must know exactly when to catch. That is the true challenge of cooking a main meal, the part no one ever sees. It is not any single dish that is hard. It is coordinating all of them, knowing that the meat needs an hour and a half, the greens 10 minutes, the gravy last, and the pudding already simmering before anyone sits down to eat. All of it has to reach the table hot at the same moment, with nothing spoiled by waiting and nothing served undercooked. Keeping all these timings in mind, making sure once you get it wrong, the meal goes wrong, the vegetables might be freshly cooked, but the meat cold, or the pudding might not come out just right. Every day, with just 2 hands and a single stove and no reminders, she brings it all perfectly together. A quietly mastered skill upstairs people will never know she has. Cooking a main meal is like a calm, silent command, and she is a natural at it. The kitchen is filled with the scent of meat and steam from the pots. The morning chill already feels far behind. First comes the tablecloth, the main meal cloth, laid smooth and clean just like the breakfast cloth, hanging evenly around the edges. Then she sets out everything needed for the meal. Knives and forks placed properly at each spot. Knife on the right, fork on the left. Always that way. Spoons ready for pudding. Salt within reach, with the condiment rack beside it. Bread sliced and set aside. Cups, water, little things on the table, all placed by those hands so practiced at arrangement the items fall perfectly into place. She marks the seats for everyone about to sit down, then walks around the table once, twice, checking if everything is evenly positioned, if the cutlery opposite is symmetrical, if anything is askew or forgotten. Then she returns to the kitchen, where the main meal is reaching a critical moment. But there is a moment between cooking and serving just as important. Plating. Once everything is finally ready, it must be moved quickly and smoothly from pots and bowls onto serving dishes. Meat must be carved or placed whole on the platter, vegetables poured out but not soaking in water, gravy poured into the sauce boat. The plates for serving and for eating must be hot, pre-warmed by the fire, since nothing ruins a good meal faster than putting steaming food onto cold china that instantly cools it. So she warms the plates and plates everything quickly and neatly when the food is at its prime. The walk from kitchen to dining room is perfectly measured, fast enough so nothing cools, careful enough to avoid drips or spills. All of this happens within a minute or two out of sight, but is the key moment that can make or break the main meal. Now come stand behind her, because the serving deserves close watching. Good table service means being almost invisible. The family sits and chats as the food appears and disappears quietly before them. Hot plates replace cold, one dish makes way for the next, all so smooth they don't even have to interrupt their conversation to think about it. That smooth flow is an art all on its own. A good servant by the table gives an impression of ease, of everything taken care of, not of a person rushing about in the background. She brings the dishes in and sets them down, lifting lids to release steam rising from the meat. She passes plates as requested. There is a small rule here, an unspoken principle she follows without thinking. When she hands a dish or plate to someone or puts a dish down for them to serve themselves, she does it from the left side, placing it to the guest's left-hand side. There is a reason behind this related to most people being right-handed. Dishes passed from the left are easier to reach and less likely to be knocked over. Whether she could explain why or not, her body knows this rule, serving each person from the left as she quietly moves around the table, and the meal flows smoothly. If you take a step back and think, there is something worth noting here. For this family, the same hour is the gentle, warm centre of their day, when they sit comfortably to a good meal, resting, chatting and eating well. But for her, that very same hour is the hardest and most demanding of all her work, with cooking, plating and serving all pressing on her, feet moving non-stop and mind racing. One meal, one room, 1 hour, experienced very differently by those inside. The family tastes only comfort, while she bears the full weight that makes it possible. Neither is wrong. This is the foundation on which a household like this is built. The comfort of a few quietly rests on the labour of one, and she no longer expects it to be any different. If the main meal is to be served with beer, which is common in a household like this, She is in charge of pouring. Beer is the everyday drink on this table, poured from a jug into glass cups, refilled as soon as glasses go empty. She leans in sideways and pours steadily and cleanly, not spilling a drop on the tablecloth, then pulls back. It is a small task, but done beautifully. Every little thing she does at this table is a beautifully done small thing. Plates passed steadily, beer glasses filled without rush, empty plates taken away just as the last bite is done. Taken alone, these things seem small and unremarkable, but together they make the difference between a main meal flowing smoothly or stumbling over itself. Halfway through, she slips away to check on the pudding. When the meat is finished, it is time for dessert, which means going back to the kitchen to plate it, turning the pudding out of its basin or dish and bringing it to the table looking perfect. Serving the main meal involves a steady coming and going, dishes appearing in order one by one. Throughout, she keeps moving between the warm kitchen and the dining room, bringing in the new and taking away the old, and keeping the whole meal slow, smooth, and just right until it quietly finishes. Finally, when the family have eaten, stood and left, the room is hers again to tidy. She sweeps crumbs from the tablecloth and floor, brushes fallen ashes from the hearth, dusts the furniture and pushes chairs neatly back to the table. Plates are gathered and taken to the kitchen for washing. 1 hour ago, the dining room in this house was full of warmth, conversation, and the aroma of the main meal. Now it quietly returns to its empty, waiting state exactly as before, as if no meal ever took place. Restoring order after a room has been used and left is something she does countless times every day. So many times she no longer counts. This is the rhythm of her work. One thing prepared, one thing used, one thing put away again. Only now, after the main meal is served and the dining room straightened, can she finally sit down and eat her own meal. Her main meal is simpler than theirs, eaten alone in the kitchen, but it is hot. It is hers, and it is the one true break she gets in the long midday. She sits down, her feet finally unburdened. The kitchen around her is warm and now quiet, for a brief moment with nothing that must be done right away. She eats slowly, or rather, at the slowest speed she allows herself, enjoying the same meal just served and this little moment of calm before the long afternoon's work waiting for her. Listen to the kitchen around her at this time. The fire in the grate dies down. A pan cools with gentle ticking sounds. Somewhere a clock beats quietly, marking the peace. No bells ring, no plates need bringing, no one calls her name. This won't last long. She will soon get up to start washing dishes, with the afternoon's work revolving around her again. But now she sits, eats and rests, and that is enough. It is a brief rest, one she has earned, in that quiet hour after the main meal is served, in the warm kitchen where she gratefully enjoys it all. In the early afternoon pause, after the hearty main meal had ended, the house fell into silence, and a task finally allowed her to step outside. The family not only had to eat today, but also tomorrow, and food would not bring itself to the door. Someone had to go out to buy it, choosing, paying, and carrying it home. In this small household, without a housekeeper or a manservant to send on errands, that someone was her. So she took off her apron used for housework, put on a soft hat, wrapped a shawl around her to ward off the autumn chill, picked up her basket and stepped out onto the street, entering the bustling daily world of the small town's afternoon. The street was lively now, filled with the gentle bustle typical of a rural town in the afternoon. Other women were also carrying baskets, doing the same kind of work she was. There were horse-drawn carts, street vendors calling out their goods, and shops with open doorways, all packed with merchandise. Leaving behind the quiet bedroom and stifling kitchen, the air here was cool and flowing. This was a big world with nothing to do with stove grates or beds, and for a short while she became part of it, walking, looking, selecting, a person in the town rather than just a pair of working hands in a house. She did not waste the time, but she truly felt the difference, feeling the outdoor air brush across her fangs, and just because of that she found this errand a delight. It was this. The best things, in the end, were the cheapest. Poor quality and cheap items broke quickly, or made you sick, or half of it had to be thrown away, which was no saving at all. A prime, intact and fresh item might cost a little more at the counter, but on the table it saved a lot. So she never just picked the cheapest things. She bought what was worth the value, and this was harder and wiser, a skill honed through day after day, year after year of practice, until the eyes and hands could instantly tell good from bad. If a household dealt fairly, year after year and week after week, with the same butcher, the same grocer and the same vegetable seller, they would become known and valued and get better service. A good merchant would keep the best items for regular customers. He would honestly tell them what was freshest today and what would be better to buy tomorrow, and he would offer small favours to make the family's week run smoother. So she always shopped at the shops this family frequented. At every counter she was a familiar face, and this familiarity itself was a kind of saving, far more valuable than struggling to save half a penny in front of an unfamiliar merchant. The butcher shop was the most important stop in the afternoon. Meat was the centrepiece of the main meal, and the largest single expense in the weekly budget, so picking good meat was the fine art of micro-procurement. She stood at the counter, figuring out what the meal needed for tomorrow, what the butcher had, and how to best combine the two. This was where her judgment showed its worth. She could instantly spot good meat, the colour, the firmness, that freshness you could not fake. She knew which cuts were for roasting, which for slow stewing, which pieces would feed the family fully and economically, and which looked fancy but were not cost-effective. The butcher often faced having too large a supply of a certain cut that wouldn't sell quickly. Maybe everyone this week wanted leg of lamb, and he was stuck with shoulder, which he did not want to keep. So he'd mark the shoulder down by a penny or two per pound, eager to get rid of it. A helper who was not too proud or rigid to demand only a certain cut could seize this deal and save money while still bringing home good meat. Over the course of the year, all these small savings, 1 penny here, 1 penny there, would add up to a considerable sum in a thrifty household. She was always alert for such chances, and was proud rather than ashamed of them. Saving a shilling through skill was as much part of her work as lighting a fire or making a bed, and she carried that pride quietly. If fish was wanted for tomorrow, it might mean a visit to the fish stall too. Fish was the most perishable of the items she bought, but also the easiest to judge. Good fish were bright, with clear eyes, firm flesh, and smelled of clean seawater with no off odours. Bad fish were obvious at a glance, dull in colour, soft in texture, smelling so bad you wanted to look away. So she looked closely, judged carefully, and only bought absolutely fresh fish because nothing was more wasteful than buying cheap fish only to throw it away uneaten, and nothing could ruin a dinner faster than fish kept over a day too long. This stop was brief but demanded sharp eyes. Here she trusted her own judgment more than anything the seller said. In a large household system, all this would be someone else's job, a housekeeper or a steward or a male cook, whose sole tasks were ordering food, keeping accounts, and dealing with merchants. Procurement was a whole department with its own ledger and authority, separate from cleaning, cooking, or waiting on others. But in this small home, it all fell to one. The girl who had lit the fire this morning was the same one choosing fresh meat this afternoon and managing the food stores tonight. She was cook and maid, buyer and storeroom keeper, condensing all these many positions from a grand house into these 2 hands. It was a huge load, but it also meant she controlled the household's entire operation completely from start to finish in a way no single servant in a big house could. The next stop was the grocery store, a very different kind of shopping. Here, she was judging not freshness, but the quality, quantity and price of the dry goods that kept the household running. Tea weighed from the box, fragrant when poured into paper bags. Sugar not sold loose, but in hard cones or blocks that had to be carefully broken at home. Flour, oatmeal, rice, dried fruit for puddings, seedless raisins, and others that had to be washed and pitted before use. Candles, soap, stove blacking, and 100 other small items that kept the household going and quietly ran out one by one, needing replenishment before being completely used up. She knew what was running low because it was her responsibility, and she filled those gaps, never buying too much or too little. To shop for a household meant keeping the entire coming week in mind. The meals to be eaten, the things to be used, the stock about to run out. Then in an afternoon's walk she made precise preparations for it all. Not too much and not too little. Buy too little and the home fell short. Buy too much and money was wasted and food might spoil. This art was all in judgment, and judgment only came from a long familiarity with the household and its habits. How much bread used per week, how quickly tea was drunk, what family members liked and didn't like. She took it all silently on board and shopped accordingly, a silent expertise that seemed nothing to others. Then came the vegetable shop where she bought seasonal produce. Here, freshness was key. Choosing crisp and bright vegetables rather than limp, yellowing ones. Picking firm roots and perfect fruit. Seasonal produce was always best and cheapest, so she followed the seasons, accepting the gifts of nature at the moment rather than longing for out-of-season expensive items. Her basket grew heavier and heavier, filled with the ingredients for the next few days, and this weight brought a feeling of contentment, the weight of a household well provided for. Every penny she spent for this family had to be accounted for clearly. In those days, one iron rule of managing a household was to record every expense the day it was paid, no matter how small. A careful household kept honest accounts. Each amount, meat, tea, candles, vegetables, clearly entered in the ledger, so nothing was missed or mistaken. At the end of each day, small expenses were totalled. At the end of the month, they were categorised, how much to the butcher, how much to the grocer. Then total outgoings were checked against cash on hand to make sure they matched. If they did, all was well. If not, the cause had to be found and fixed. When money came and went clearly and promptly, debts repaid as they arose, payments recorded, people stayed friendly, whether family and merchants, servants and mistresses. Let debts build up and accounts go unkept, and confusion, suspicion and resentment would grow. So accounts had to be settled quickly and recorded clearly. It was even better if bills could be paid in cash right at the counter, since cash payment itself was a clear way of settling accounts, and usually got a slightly better price. She honestly reported every coin spent to the lady in charge of accounts. There could be no room for doubt in this matter, since a servant entrusted with managing household money bore huge trust. She guarded that trust as carefully as silverware. Running a household ultimately rested on trust and thrift, on a servant who went out with money and came back having spent it wisely and accounted for every penny. On 1,000 small savings consistently made, buying cheap meat, paying cash, wasting nothing, recording everything carefully. It was not glamorous. Nobody sang about it, but it was the solid, quiet foundation on which a comfortable home was built. Every day she stood on that foundation fully aware of her value, even if no one else ever truly measured it. The light was changing. Much of the afternoon had passed. The shops would soon close and the street began to thin. The basket on her arm was heavy. Her feet were tired. Yet walking home with a full basket, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The supplies for today were done, and tomorrow's needs were assured. She had chosen well and spent carefully. She had no reason to regret. Tomorrow's hearty meal was secure, a small but solid happiness carrying her through the chill grey dusk back home. But one last part of the errand remained. The food she bought not only had to be purchased but properly stored. In an age without refrigerators, preserving food itself demanded special care. The food storage room was a cool, dark chamber used to keep the household's food. It was set on the shady, cold side of the house, away from sunlight, with windows covered by screens to keep air flowing, making it as cool as the season allowed. Stepping in from the warm kitchen was like entering a stiller air, dim, cold, carrying a faint, sweet smell from the stored foods. Here she put away what she bought, each item in its rightful place on cold stone shelves that locked in the chill. In a home without ice, fresh meat had to be kept in a cool, dry and well-ventilated spot, or it would not keep. So it was placed on cold racks, or hung where air flowed all around. People also used an old clever trick, lightly dusting the surface of the meat with flour, like putting on a pale, thin coat. which helped keep flies away and stop the air from spoiling the surface. Meat dusted with flour and hung in a cool dark spot stayed fresh until needed. Put in a warm place, it would spoil quickly. She knew these little tricks as well as everything else in her work. Not from books, but from experience. Without thinking, she dusted the meat and set it in a dark, cool corner. Butter and milk went in the coolest place, covered to keep out dust and flies. Cooked and leftover food was put in its own dishes, not fine tableware but ordinary storage plates, each covered and put in its place. Vegetables that would sour if stored too long were eaten in order before going bad. The storage room had an order, a kind of wisdom about what had to be eaten first and what could keep. She carried this knowledge in her mind and managed this cold little room with it, making sure no good food was wasted just because it was forgotten. It was too easy to let good food go bad. A careful servant could not bear to see food that could have been used on Thursday, but ended up thrown away on Friday. So the storeroom was checked regularly, kept tidy, nothing forgotten in dark corners until rotten. Everything usable was used up in sequence. Everything that could be saved was saved. Leftover lamb became a fresh dish tomorrow. Bones went into the soup pot. Every little saving on the table was carried out as faithfully as saving money at the shop. If a penny saved at the butcher's meant a shilling's worth of food rotted in the storeroom, that penny saved had been pointless. She understood this well and practiced thrift at both ends. Tomorrow's meal lay quietly on the cold shelves waiting. Stocks were full, gaps filled, and accounts settled down to the last penny. The dark, cool room silently protected the household's food. Whatever tomorrow brought, at least hunger or shortage would not touch this table. She had everything arranged, carrying her basket through the town and managing the storeroom with these careful hands. Just like everything else, she did it quietly, always ahead of need. She closed the storeroom door, locking in that cool, dim order, then returned to the warm kitchen to face the rest of the long afternoon's work waiting there. The errand was done. The household had food for another day. The empty basket hung again on its hook, ready for tomorrow. And those upstairs would never know exactly how the food arrived, how carefully it had been chosen, and how little waste there had been in getting and storing it. They would just sit down as usual and enjoy their hearty meal, never thinking to ask. That was exactly what she wanted, unnoticed and unquestioned, the best proof that she had done her job perfectly. Every plate that held food, every dish the family used, every pot, bowl and pan used for cooking, all now wait in the scullery to be washed. She heats the water and gets to work handling the greasy plates and scorched frying pans in the right order, washing the less dirty ones first while the water is still clean, saving the dirtiest pots for last. The fine china and glassware need gentle washing. The water can't be too hot, and they're dried immediately with a soft cloth so they keep their shine without water spots. Pots and pans, however, are different. Those with baked-on burnt food require heavy scrubbing with sand or some baking soda, plus a good amount of elbow grease, until the black patches come off and the metal shines clean again. This is the hardest part of washing and always saved for last, when the water has turned grey and her hands are exhausted. But a pot put away unwashed will spoil, so each one must be scrubbed, rinsed, dried, and hung back in its place, ready for the next morning. It is a warm, damp, and patient job, her hands soaked as the clean items stack beside her to drip and dry. After the busy main meal, there is even a quiet sort of calm in the simple, repetitive actions: wash, rinse, set aside. The stack of dirty dishes grows smaller as the clean pile grows taller, until finally the cutting board is clear, the kitchen neat again, and the kettle set on the stove for tea later. The kitchen that an hour ago was smoky, steaming and tense now slowly returns to peace. In those days, table knives were made of steel, not the kind of material that stays shiny on its own. After use and washing, they would darken and stain. When cutting an apple or a piece of fish, the blade's edge touching the juices would turn black. So cleaning the knives was a regular task done in the scullery with special tools, possibly a knife sharpening board, a long wooden plank sprinkled with fine cleaning powder where each blade rubbed back and forth until sharp and bright. Or, for wealthier households, a knife washing machine, a small cylinder filled with brushes. You'd insert the knives and turn a handle to clean several blades at once. Whichever way, the blade went in dull and came out gleaming, ready to be stored clean for the next meal. This was another small restorative task that filled her afternoons. Later in the day it was quieter than the morning, and a servant in a respectable home was expected to look the part. So she took off the work clothes and heavy apron worn for hard chores, washed up and changed into a simpler, neater dress for the afternoon. She put on a clean cap and tied a fresh apron. It was a small but pleasant change, from the girl who scrubs pots to the neat maid bringing tea and answering the door for visitors. The hardest work of the day was done, what was left was lighter, and she faced it with calm and neatness, as if the morning's toil had never marked her. At this point, it's worth pausing to look at how her week was arranged. Not everything had to be done daily. The daily cycle, lighting fires, cooking, making beds, dusting, happened unfailingly every morning. But the deeper cleaning, the heavy labour that every room needed now and then was spread through the week. A different big task each day kept the whole house thoroughly tidy without tiring anyone out on any single day. One day was for the best rooms, cleaning every corner thoroughly. Another 1 or 2 days were for bedrooms, taking turns for deep cleaning. One day was for the stairs and corridors, another day for the kitchen and its utensils. Usually the last working day was for polishing silver and brass. So the work moved forward in a steady rhythm, repeating the same weekly cycle with a specific large task added to the daily routine. This way, no place was ever completely neglected, and the work never piled up all at once. Washing all the household linen and clothes was a huge job that took a whole day, a tough day of boiling, scrubbing, wringing and drying, filling the kitchen with steam from morning until night without stopping. It was the heaviest day of the week, a special kind of exhaustion anyone who managed a household back then knew well, but it had its place in the cycle. Once a week, and once survived, it was done. The reward for the labour was the dry, folded, fresh-smelling linen put away. Knowing today was not laundry day, she was glad and didn't think about it anymore. As the afternoon gently shifted towards an evening, it was time for tea. This was a lighter meal than the main ones, served more softly. The tea set was brought out and arranged, the tea brewed, bringing a small moment of quiet pleasure to the family sitting in the warm parlour. The outside light had turned golden, then slowly faded through the autumn afternoon into good grey. Soon the lamps would need lighting. She was also in charge of the lamps. As night fell and rooms grew dim, the house had to be lit for the evening. This was more than simply lighting flames on wicks. The lamps had to be carefully tended, trimming the wicks so they burned cleanly without smoke, filling them with oil, wiping the daytime haze from the glass shades, so the light was bright and steady. A neglected lamp gave weak, smoky, harsh light and blackened the shade. A well-cared-for lamp cast clear, warm light. So she trimmed, refilled and polished, then carried the soft glow from one room to the next. Window after window glowed with golden light against the gathering darkness outside. Evening under her care came comfortably to the household just like the morning had. After the family finished tea, the whole house would slowly prepare for bedtime, one room at a time. This was one of the gentlest parts of the day. She went upstairs to the bedrooms, made the beds just right, folded down the covers where needed so the sleepers could slip in easily later. On cold nights, warming the beds was her most comforting task. She took the bed warmer, a metal pan with a long handle and a lid, filled it with hot coals taken from the fire, and slowly moved it back and forth between the cold sheets, chasing away the chill. Sliding into a warm bed on a cold autumn night was a small but deep comfort in life, one few thought much about beyond the warm hands carrying the bed warmer upstairs. She refilled the water jugs with fresh water for night and morning use. She closed the windows open during the day, pulled down blinds and curtains to keep out the cold and dark, turning each room back into the warm, enclosed nest it had been before the morning airing. Room by room, she prepared the upstairs for sleep. The rooms that morning she had emptied and aired to the cold were now softly closed up and ready for rest. It was like undoing the morning work, reversing the airing, folding the house away for the night. At night, when the heavy work was done and the house was quiet, she could finally sit by the kitchen fire and do her sewing. There was always mending to do. Fallen hems, seams to reinforce, endless little repairs on clothes and linens. Part of the work still, but quiet work, sitting work. Done in the warm glow of a dying fire and the silence around, it was as close to rest as the night could bring. She sat, she sewed, and the long day's grip on her gradually loosened stitch by stitch. Take a moment to think of the whole day's path. It began with the first fire in the dark and ended with the last bolt slid home in the dark. Between those points, she woke the house, fed it, cleaned it, warmed it, then put it safely to bed, room by room, hour by hour. Fires were lit, burned and banked. Beds were stripped, aired, made up and folded back. Meals were cooked, served and cleared away. Every room was prepared, used, then tidied again. Nothing she did lasted long. The fires she lit went out. The beds she made were slept in. The food she made was eaten. And tomorrow, everything started over, just like today. It sounds hard, but there is another way to see it. Her work was the silent wheel that kept the whole house turning. Without it, nothing was warm, nothing clean, nothing ready. She was the reason this house felt like a home, and that was no small thing. The tea utensils had to be cleaned and put away, the kitchen cleaned for tomorrow morning, and one small task she never forgot, looking ahead with kindness to herself at dawn. She placed the firewood for tomorrow, the kind that had to be dry to catch flame, beside the warm stove so it could dry through the night and be easy to light in the cold dark morning under her hands. It was a small thing. It was today reaching forward to help tomorrow start. All this work was like that, quietly getting ready for the next day again and again. Finally she made one last round of the house to lock doors and windows for the night. Each door checked and locked. Bolts slid home one by one. Front door, back door, sealing the house against the dark, keeping safe those inside asleep. She carried a candle through silent rooms, making sure everything was shut, calm, no dangerous fires left burning, every door secure. At last, at the final door, she slid the last bolt. The crisp, solid click was the sound of the day's end, the house sealed, the work done, night having fallen. She took up her candle, climbed the stairs, and returned to her little room beneath the roof. The same staircase she'd walked hours before into cold and dark. Around the house was stillness. Her candle cast small flickering shadows on the walls. Her feet knew every step. The family slept or were slipping into dreams, lying in beds she had aired, tidied, made and warmed for them. The fires were banked or out, the wood dried beside the stove, doors secured, lamps out. The long day began by her and carried through from the first cold shutter in the morning to the last lock at night, now finally ended in quiet. In her room she laid down the candle. She was utterly exhausted. A body that had laboured since before dawn, sending deep fatigue through her. The bed was narrow and plain, but it was enough. The room was cold, very quiet, and at last entirely her own. Now she could finally let down her shoulders. She let the day drift away. She had done it all again. Every fire, every room, every meal, every bolt. Tomorrow she would do it all again, and tonight she could finally go to sleep. Before you say goodbye to her, stay with her for a little while longer. Think back on all the small, unnoticed tasks she did by hand today. The fire she brought to life from cold ashes. The doorstep washed clean at the edge of the street. The bed aired out, turned, and warmed again. The proper meal served at the table, the oil lamp trimmed to a bright flame, and the last bolt quietly slid across the door. None of these will be remembered. They were never meant to be remembered. Her whole day was made up of these tasks that disappear as soon as they are done and need to be done again by the next morning. Yet it is her hands, and the hands of Thusgolns like her, that kept the world's homes warm, neat and bright over those long years, even though they were never thanked or truly seen. Tonight, when you lie down in your clean, comfortable, warm bed prepared just for you, you might take a moment to think of all the quiet care that goes into making a place feel like home. That work is a kind of silent love. It asks for nothing in return, it only prepares everything to be ready, warm and good for others. The world is full of this kind of love, far more than whatever gets noticed. And tonight, you rest in the comfort it brings, just as that family sleeps safely under her care. If something in her long quiet day has touched you, feel free to leave a few words below. Tell me where you listen tonight, or in the cold dark before dawn, what small task you would least want to do. There's no rush, and nothing you have to do, but knowing who rests in the dark with these stories is a gentle and joyful thing. This little channel exists for that. We gather peaceful histories and everyday lives of ordinary people and tell them slowly and kindly to help you fall asleep. There will be many more nights like this, the stillness of a medieval monastery, the heat of an old Egyptian afternoon, rooms lit by lamps through many ages, filled with tiny forgotten lives. If you want to walk through more times like these with us, you're welcome to follow along and help this quiet corner grow night by night. There's no rush. You can wait until morning to decide, but for now, you don't have to do anything or go anywhere. The house is dark, the door is bolted, the fire burns down low. The girl, the family, and the whole sleeping street have finally put down this long day. So close your eyes if they haven't already closed. Slow your breath. Now, rest like this house. Good night and sweet dreams.